Parents of Reddit, what is the best weird flex but okay moment you've seen from your child? Story 1. My son told me he doesn't need school because he already knows the name of 10 dinosaurs. Edit for anyone who wants to know, my son's favorite dino is the Spinosaurus. Story 2. My son started 2nd grade this week. A couple of weeks ago the school sent out postcards with the date and time of the open house and his teacher's name. I asked him if he was excited to be in Mrs. Soa's class, and he said yes, but he's also worried. I asked what he was worried about, and he said what if she falls in love with me and wants to marry me? I laughed and reassured him that he need not worry, since she's already married. Story 3. When my son was about 5 we went to visit relatives in the Washington, D.C. area. We were on the metro when my son eyed a very pretty professional young woman. I've got a lot of blocks, he told her. If you come to my room he'll show you. Then he made motorcycle noises for about 10 seconds. Story 4. When I was an after-school tutor for primary school kids, I excused a boy to the bathroom. He came back telling me he made the biggest poo in the world. He intentionally didn't flush so that I could come look at it. I told him that was great, but it was art time. He said his big poo was art. Story 5. A friend of mine had 2 young boys. The older one, maybe 5, was sitting with him and pointed at a white hair and said, "What's this, Papa?" My friend said, "Oh, it just means I'm getting old," and his son looked at him dead serious. Looked at his brother and said, "Well, I guess it's just us and Mom soon, huh?" Story 6. When I was 6 my absent father came back into my life briefly, and I paraded him around all of my friends bragging saying this is my dad. I bet you thought I didn't have a dad, but I did. He was gone again within a month, LMAO. Story 7. My son, for at the time, was I guess trying to impress the 6-year-old neighbor girl. He leaned casually on his arm and said, "I have lots of accidents, p.n. accidents. I hope for his sake his pickup lines improve." Story 8. When my son was 5, a waitress at Applebee's asked him how old he was, to which he exclaimed, "I'm 5 and I pooped today." I think everyone within 4 tables of us was very impressed. Edit. While this post really blew up, awesome stories all, I've enjoyed reading them all, thanks for the medals as well, RIP my inbox. Story 9. My 4-year-old son kept peeing on the toilet seat because he wouldn't hold his penis. I told him he had to start holding it, and his response was, "I can't hold it because it's too big." Edit. Whelp. After spending 7 years on Reddit my most popular comment is now about my 4-year-old's penis, thank you. Story 10. My 6-year-old son recently put his foot down letting me know it was not okay for me to tell him what he could wear or not because he is allowed to have his own fashion. Okay fine, shorts, sandals and 1 black sock it is. Story 11. My son was in the tub and asked exactly how old he was. Me about 4 years 10 months and 4 days. After a few moments of deep thought, I heard him say quietly and reverently to himself, "And I haven't been bit by a single wild animal. Oh man, still kills me." Edit. Thanks for the silver and gold. I will take him for ice cream today to celebrate his continued escape from squirrels. I dunno, we live in a city. Story 12. Not my kid, but a friend of mine was trying to teach his daughter to pick up her toys when she was younger. When she didn't do it one time, he told her he was going to throw away everything that was still on the floor. She picked them up and put them in the trash can for him. Story 13. My toddler just threw her dinner on the floor, started clapping, yelled at chorrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr Edit thanks for the gold, kind strangers, I high-fived my daughter in celebration. Story 14 When my son was potty training, I started letting him do the cleanup, then I'd have to finish. After a bit of this, he figured he was pretty well good to go on his own, and he was very big boy about it. So for the next couple of weeks, he'd do his thing which always included stripping naked then come running out to wherever I was, bend over with his cheeks spread, and shout hey mom, I wiped my butt all by myself look it. Story 15 My 4-year-old Henry was carrying a tub of Legos down the stairs. It was slightly heavy but he insisted on carrying it himself. He was struggling so I was walking slowly with him in case he fell, he says, through little 4-year-old grunts. This box is heavy, I have to use Henry powers. Story 16 Not a parent, but I teach swimming lessons. This one 5-year-old first day of lessons was like, I'm not very good at kicking. So I said, that's okay, nobody is perfect at everything. Dead serious he just goes no, imperfect at everything. Story 17 Had an Amber Alert hit my phone one night while my then 6-year-old was playing a game on it. She asks what that was and I explained it's a message that gets sent out if a kid gets kidnapped. She looks at it again and sees it's for a town over 2 hours from where we live. She then asks me why they sent to if it's so far away. I said because they want everyone to look and find the kid. Wouldn't you want everyone to look if you got kidnapped? They want to find the kid so they don't get killed. She leans over close to my ear and whispers I'm very difficult to kill. Story 18 Niece After first day in school I learned how to count to 11 today. I bet you can't. Weird flex but wait, I indeed cannot count to 11. When my sister was younger she told her teacher that my dad was a clown. He actually owns an auto body shop but I guess she thought he was a pretty funny. Apparently the parent-teacher conference was hilarious. Your daughter tells us you're a clown, what an interesting career. Story 19 My 5-year-old talks to all of the animals. They're all her friends. She literally names every creature she sees in a day. See a moth, oh that's Stella my moth friend, that's Jake my friend, he's on his way to his grandma's. A rattlesnake, don't kill it mom that's Jenna, she's a nice protector snake no she won't go near it. She's smarter than that, just really weird. She's also insists that she's a super kid, with batteries for everything. doesn't want to eat anymore, my food battery is full, doesn't want to go to bed, my sleep battery is full, and she shows you where these batteries are, one on her leg, another on her neck. I'm starting to wonder if I was abducted. Story 20. My 10-month-old son hates being changed. Recently he figured out that if he grabs his in a death grip with one of his hands, it makes it impossible to get the diaper on him. I die a little inside every time he does this. Story 21. I was playing cops and robbers with my son and my niece, both about 3 at the time. They put me in the jail the sofa and proceeded to walk out of the room. As she's exiting, my niece turns to me with a deadpan face and goes, "Watch your back," then just leaves. Story 22. I ran around telling everyone I was the most beautiful girl in the world. I even told my mom's friend that Shirley Temple was almost as cute as me, used up all my confidence at 3. Story 23. I remember being about 6 to 8 and bragging to multiple strangers about how my older red-headed and white sister, for context I was a little brown-haired, brown-eyed, brown-skinned child, was my full-blooded sister, but had a different last name because I thought it was a cool fun fact about my family. Turns out she was a half-sibling and nobody told me until I was older. Story 24. Not a parent, but when I was little I had a child therapist, and I told her very happily and even in a bragging tone that I was only 8 years old and I already had a training bra, and I remember her just looking at me for a while and going, "Okay." Story 25. My daughter had a paper from school that she brought home. On the paper it said if I had $1 million I would. And all the kids had to put their answer. My daughter wrote that she would pop out her eye. When I asked her about it later, she explained how she wanted to pop out her eye and replace them with chocolate eyeballs. Story 26. Tonight my 3-year-old stopped midway up the stairs and turned slowly to me and said, "Mom, earlier, while you were out, I put on my pants all by myself." I have no idea why he emphasized every word, but then he smirked and turned and kept climbing the stairs. Big day, the kid is really going places. Story 27. I am the child here, but when I was maybe 3 or 4, I took a dump that was green, which was quite exciting to me at the time. I went and told my mom, I just had a that was green, and she just told me next time make me a blue one. Story 28. My 8-year-old son's doctor was trying to make him comfortable during an EKG by telling him he had to leave his ear with the doctor. They went back and forth for a while, and finally the doctor said he would trade him the ear for a lollipop. My son said he would not give up his ear but wanted the lollipop. The doctor said, "What? That is not a fair trade. What will you give me for the lollipop?" My son answered dead serious, "I get the lollipop and you get my respect." Story 29. I'm 11 years older than my little brother, and when he was 4 he went around the entire neighborhood and wrote his name on everyone's garage doors in really big letters with a permanent marker. Story 30. While babysitting my cousin, she got really close to me and smelled like rotten eggs, so I asked her if she farted and she immediately replied, "No, that's my breath." At least she's self-aware. Story 31. My son, who was 4 or 5 at the time, walked into the kitchen and said to my wife, "Give me my usual, but put it in a real glass." She's like, "What, your milk?" It was then we realized we had to rein in the iPad and Curse of Monkey Island. Edit thanks for the silver. Edit thanks for the gold kind internet stranger. Story 32. There are lots of members of our family tree, and I'm probably the prettiest one, don't you think? My daughter to me, age 7, she is an identical twin, so kind of a weird flex. Edit Jesus. This had like 50 upvotes when I checked it after an hour or so, and I'm just coming back a week later. Sorry for not replying to any comments. To answer one question, here was my response: no, that would be Oma, my mother's statement of fact, but we're all nice looking. It's a nice thing to be, but being funny and creative is better. Then she said very proudly that she and her twin are both artistic and kind to animals. And that was that. Story 33. My 3-5-year-old outside the other day. He was stabbing the ground with a stick. I asked, "What you up to, buddy?" "I'm digging holes for the ants to climb into." "That's so sweet of me, Mom, he's a nut." Story 34. So, my 7-year-old has always been eccentric. I started keeping a log of some things she says in passing on my phone when she was 3, and there are some good ones I feel apply to this thread. Something smells like chocolate, and it's coming from the inside of my mouth. Yeah, well, I can read blank spaces. Chickens have chicken in their bodies. Most of these are responses to her older sister bragging about something she did to excel in school. Story 35. When my daughter was I think 8, we were in the pool throwing a beach ball around. I tossed it to her. She catches it then says to me, "Is that all you've got, old man?" Story 36. My son let out a high-pitched screech while playing a video game. Told him, "Dude, knock it off." A few seconds later I heard him whisper, "It's my battle cry." Story 37. When my brother was 2 or 3 he rolled down the car window to get the attention of the gas station attendant and shouted, "Hey mister, I got a penis." He had a mullet. If that helps paint a better picture. Story 38. My son was watching me cut down a very small tree, like 6 inches across, very small, and the following occurred: "Son, wow, I've never seen someone cut down a tree that big before." Me, well, I mean, you've only seen one person cut down a tree so far, but you've only been alive for 5 years, so give it time. Son, excuse me, I've been alive much longer than that. Me, oh yeah, how long have you been alive then? Son, 10,000 years. Me, you know, I actually don't doubt that, he's a treasure. Story 39. My wife brought my 3-year-old son to my job site, since he really wanted to drive the excavator, so my uncle, who operates the excavator, lets him dig some holes and play around while sitting on my uncle's lap. He then comes up to me and says, "Daddy, I want to drive the excavator with you." I told him I don't know how to. "You have to go with your uncle." His reply, "It's okay, Daddy, I'll teach you," with the biggest smirk on his face. Story 40. Just a couple days ago, my 2-year-old son woke up, so I went to change him. I pulled his Jamie pants off, then went to undo the diaper, and the whole time he has this look on his face like he's waiting for something. I pull the diaper off the front of him and boing, he's got a. He even smiled big and threw his arms up at the moment of reveal, like Tieda. When I wasn't appropriately amazed and merely continued with changing him, he pointed at it and said, loudly and forcefully, "That's mine, yes my dear, that is your penis, congratulations." Story 41. When my kids was potty training, he was in a phase where he loved temporary tattoos. We used tattoos as a reward for a successful potty trip. He got so he was covered on both arms, back and chest. We didn't think much of it, living in Seattle, until one summer day we took him to the wading pool. For one of the first times in public, we took his shirt off, and he strode out into the pool with his toddler abs, and Thomas the Tank Train shorts, looking like he had just finished a hard set of reps at the free weights in the prison yard. Story 42. When my son was about 6, he was in the back seat with a friend, and he boasted that he had once thrown up his entire Chinese dinner on his bedroom carpet, and you could see the food and everything. Story 43. My 7-year-old daughter didn't want our house guests to go in her room because that might see her awards good grades, taekwondo belts. She worried they would think she was famous. Story 44. Not a kid, but when I was 5, I had a mad crush on the 20-year-old daughter of this wealthy family friend of ours. I had asked for her hand in marriage and she agreed willingly, playful to her but fully serious on my part. She was carrying her soon-to-be groom when her mother confronted me. "You need to have money if you want to marry my daughter." I looked right into her eyes and without missing a beat reached into my little pockets and tossed her a penny. Her face priceless, my smirk flawless, my game never peaked again. Story 45. Was running behind for work today and the young one told me she had to. I asked if she could hold it until daycare 2-minute drive. She said no. She wasn't lying, she had already pooped as I was asking. It was on the kitchen floor. Story 46. My daughter 3 can in the backyard without anyone knowing. I picked it up for weeks wondering why the dogs looked so weird. I looked out of the sliding glass door one day while my girls were playing. I saw my 3-year-old pooping in the middle of the yard. Her older sister 5 sprayed her with the water house as soon as the log hit the ground. It was a spectacular scene, and I will never let them forget it. Story 47. My kid 5 is obsessed with cars, lives and breaths motorsport. He's driving his go-kart in the driveway and our neighbors yell over, "Wow, you're amazing, kiddo," and kid yells back dead serious, "I know, I'm a better driver than most of the grown-ups I know." He's honestly not wrong. Edit. He's 5, but when I wrote it like this it made it sound like he drove a fancy BMW, which he doesn't. Story 48. My daughter told me she is made out of love, which I have told her before, and that means she is invincible, and so I can't hold her hand while she walks on the wall, which I have not told her. Story 49. Obligatory not apparent disclaimer. When I was in kindergarten, one of the boys came up to me and said, "I'm so strong I brush my teeth without water." It's always stuck with me because I was genuinely impressed. I ran around all day sharing the news as if it were some miraculous superpower or something. Story 50. Not my child, but a friend 7-year-old. We were talking about golf and he told me that he can drive the ball 1,000 yards, but we can't see it because the simulator glitches whenever he does it. Story 51. My wedding day, the ring bearer 5 years old is meeting one of my groomsmen 19 years old for the first time ever. Ring bearer walks up, is introduced and he responds by going, "I know where your nuts are," and in the perfect height to just punch them. Then he just stood there. Edit. Not my child, my brother-in-law. Oops, my bad. Story 52. I was over at my little cousin's house when he was about 10 years old. He was really excited to show me something, but I didn't know what it was. He ran down to the basement where he and his sister had their playroom, along with their dad's old computer. He starts up the computer and opens up Age of Empires 2 and proceeds to show me this incredible empire that he has built. I don't know what I expected his surprise to be, but it definitely wasn't that. It was definitely a weird flex that came out of nowhere, but at the same time the sincere excitement that lit up his eyes as he explained everything to me was probably the happiest I have ever seen him. Story 53. He's not my kid, but my nephew. He likes to call my attention and then does a run and jump or spins around. He thinks he's and I let him think that because he's a cute little dude. Story 54. When my son was about 2.5, we thought it would be a good idea to start potty training him. We sat him down, talked to him, explaining to him when he pees poops in the potty he can reward. He was less than thrilled. It was pretty clear he was not interested. We start the process of putting him on the potty every morning at regular intervals, etc. After 2 days, he hasn't done anything on the potty, with the added bonus of not having any bowel movements at all, and this kid was regular. After 4 days we begin to panic. Prune juice, oatmeal, apple juice, anything to get him to. At day 5, we are at the DR's who tells us to use suppositories. You guys, we gave him suppositories for 3 nights. Still nothing. Day 10 rolls around and we're thinking it's time for the hospital. He's got a blockage, he's sick, something is seriously wrong here. Take him to the DR, one last time before the hospital. This time we see a different DR, who looks at us and asks if we are potty training him. We shake our heads yes, wondering why it matters. Since he hasn't even for 10 days, he barely needs a diaper, let alone a potty. He kind of smiles and says, "Well, stop." He told us that he thought that the potty training was causing him to hold his bowel movements, and that when he was ready to be potty trained, he would let us know, skeptical, but willing to give it a shot. Instead of the hospital we went back home. We made a big show of putting the potty chair up, and told him that if he pooped, he could have any toy in Target, we were desperate, and no more potty training. 20 minutes later he took the biggest of his little life, and we took our weary, but relieved asses to Target to buy him his dream toy, a Hot Wheels car wash, best $29.99 we ever spent. 3 months later he wakes up, says I want to go potty like daddy, and has been potty trained ever since. Story 55. While leaving a family gathering, my cousin asked my little boy for a fist bump. My child refused. Cousin said, come on, why no fist bump? My kid, 5 at the time, looks him straight in the eye and says, I don't want to break every bone in your arm. Story 56. When I was young, my little sister nearly failed kindergarten. She didn't know the alphabet. In fact, she didn't bother trying to learn it. When asked why, she said, I don't need to learn my letters because I'm pretty. Story 57. My 3-year-old told me that milk is terrible now and she only drinks coffee with her dinner. Edit, I don't give my toddler coffee instead of milk just because she said that. It's called an imagination. Crazy that I need to justify that. Story 58. Obligatory, not a parent but aunt of 6. My youngest nephew was 4 at the time and was watching me finish my makeup at my sister's house. All of my nieces and nephews are mixed black-white, so he's aware he's lighter than me as in black, but he was curious about it. Nephew, Aunt Little Lussajai, are you brown? He has a lisp and it's adorable. Me, yeah, I'm brown, you're brown too, like a mocha. And suddenly indignant, no I not, I Gwathan, and that's my brother Quinton. Cool, you're Grayson, he's Quinton, and in brown, and nods head vigorously. Story 59. ID say repost if not much traffic. This could be hilarious. Self-story, I had to go to the bathroom really bad in the 4th grade, raised my hand to go and everything in my P.E. teacher wouldn't let me even though I said it was an emergency, so I pissed myself in front of him, gray sweats and all. Story 60. My 3-year-old nephew was walking around the house one day. He kept touching his private area, so we asked if he needed to go to the bathroom. He says no, so we ask why does he keep touching his private area. His reply, cause it's pretty, and gives us a huge smile and walks off. Story 61. I was babysitting a 7-year-old overnight. At one point, a few minutes after checking on him and going outside to enjoy the porch, he woke up screaming, running through the house because he heard a moth in his sleep. He was terrified of moths. Sure as there was a moth in his room, he refused to sleep until I killed it. 1010. Great hearing. Story 62. I was telling the 6-year-old about my lottery ticket and he asked if we win, can I have 1 million? I am going to give it to my principal, so he closes the school forever. Evil mastermind. Story 63. I'm not a parent but I sometimes play with my nieces when I visit my family members. My oldest niece's favorite thing when she was just starting to speak was puppies. She loved dogs of all kinds and one surefire way to make her smile was to point one out to her. However, for a long time she only knew puppy and not dog. Come one day, I'm reading one of her animal books to her and we get to the dog. I say, hey look, it's a puppy. She just turns to me with a stern look and says, no dog. I really felt put in my place, like she was insulted that I was patronizing her. Story 64. My niece, mom, I made $1 for walking. Me says casually, I told her I'd give her some money if I took her to the park and didn't have to carry her anywhere. Story 65. My stepdaughter, I think she was about 5 at the time, was wearing some Minnie Mouse spandex. From the back seat of the car you hear, you want to spank my Minnie Mouse. Me and my wife died laughing. Story 66. I remember being in 2nd or 3rd grade, and my friend said, but I can stick my middle finger up at the teacher and not get in trouble. He proceeded to hold up the back of his open hand toward the teacher, with all 5 fingers extended. I never said I would put down the other fingers. We laughed, and I thought it was a great joke. That night, during dinner, I said to my mother, I can stick my middle finger up at you and it's okay, and I proceeded to show her the back of my hand, with all 5 fingers up. Apparently, she did not think this was a great joke, because the next thing I knew, I got slapped on the back of the head so hard that I chipped my tooth on my glass. Story 67. Not me, but a story my friend with a 4-year-old and 8-month-old told me. 8mo's babble 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 mom. Sometimes I wonder what he's trying to say. For year-old mom, I'm pretty sure 8mo's old name said urine. Mom, I'm pretty sure he didn't. For year-old, yes he did, he just told me. Story 68. I don't have a kid, but when I was maybe 8 I heard my uncle bragging about his beer gut and gesturing to his stomach, so one day when my dad was working on something outside with his shirt off drinking beer, I very proudly told him, Dad, you're getting a beer gut, and smiled very widely, and he was visibly hurt and said that was mean, and I didn't understand for weeks why I insulted him. Story 69. My 3-year-old got new Toy Story underwear, getting dressed after a bath, and he goes tearing into the other room in his undies yelling, hey mom, look at my Woody. Story 70. My 3-year-old said she wanted to be a scientist. I was so proud. The next day we were driving and she says, Dad, there's a scientist. It was a guy on a street corner spinning a sign for a pizza place. A scientist, sigh. Story 71. Husband asked him to carry his juice cup. He looks at him and goes, I can't, I only have 2 hands. He also wasn't carrying anything. Edit. Another one was when he went and did a big on the potty. He's 3 and he has to look at it afterwards cause obviously, but all of a sudden he went, that's a big. Not gonna eat it like him, sorry what. Story 72. I teach swim lessons and my one kid told me in the proudest tone possible that she has 3 boyfriends. She's 5. This was the same conversation where another girl told me her best friend who had called this girl her girlfriend wanted to marry her 2-year-old brother. Like it's nice these girls are getting around more than I am, but I'm trying to teach them how to streamline kick. Story 73. My 3-year-old just told my wife while I was drying her off after a bath and tickling her, you married this guy, in a super sarcastic like WTF did you do voice. Was quite funny. Story 74. I was teaching third graders about our area's agricultural sector and asked if the kids knew any of our local farmers. A kid in a tie-dye sweatshirt raised his hand and says, "I do," and I enthusiastically take the bait, asking him what his farmer friend grows. Pot. The kid deadpanned, leaving me to quickly turn the focus of our discussion. Can't lie, I was pretty proud of his humor and comedic timing, but would not have been able to unring that bell if the class caught on to the joke. Story 75. My sister did this growing up. My grandpa drove a couple hours to come to her second or third birthday. When he was getting ready to leave, my parents told my sister to go give him a hug. She did not want to go give him a hug, they kept telling her to. Eventually she walked over to my grandpa and kicked him right in the leg. That pretty much sums up my sister until she turned 30. Story 76. My 5-year-old godson once told me, "In all seriousness, Mama doesn't make the best food. Daddy tells her it's good. Sometimes we go to local yogurt place for dessert and Daddy sneaks me to McDonald's, especially if Mama burnt the food like last night." I nodded and said something to the effect of, "So Daddy takes you to get an extra snack so you get to eat something yummy and not hurt Mom's feelings." My godson nodded and said, "And Daddy says I cook better than Mama, huh buddy?" And I say, "Yes Daddy you do, but guess what? Hey race," where he smiles and cocks his head. Daddy is a bad cook too. I've tricked them both and I get McDonald's all the time when I tell them I like their food secretly more. I hate all their food. Story 77. When I was little I proudly announced that whale was the reason that the ocean was salty. I then proceeded to sing it, and when someone told me to stop, I said, "Why, it's just like pee." I thought I was a little genius. Story 78. Not me, but my friend. He was in line at the bank with his probably 5-year-old daughter at the time. Everyone was just standing there minding their own business when the kid blurts out, "Sometimes my dad poops in his underwears." Story 79. My son wakes up early with me to have breakfast before I leave for work. He was about 8 years old when he sleepily told me, "I know all your tricks, Dad." I answered with, "You have been eating your cereal with a fork." I had swapped his spoon for a fork a few minutes before that doomed flex. Story 80. My wife and I took the kids out to walk our dogs. My son about halfway through got super angry and yelled at us, "Can we hurry up?" I got kid to do, he was like 6 to 7 at the time. Story 81. I went to a nature park with my cousin and her kid who is about 5. We went into the reptile house, so I started telling my cousin's daughter about snakes. After I was done she just turned to me, said, "Hey, you know what I know," and repeated every fact that I just told her back to verbatim. Story 82. When my daughter was 4, we were eating dinner together at my desk watching videos of cute animals, spaghetti and a half glass of milk so it wouldn't spill on my keyboard. She says to me, "Daddy, today we learned about capacity." "Oh yeah kiddo, what does that mean?" "The amount a container can hold." I'm impressed. It's spot on and say, "Wow, you really get that concept." She responds, "Sincerely Daddy, you didn't fill my cup to capacity." Story 83. I was wearing a Superman shirt under my jacket. I got my 3-year-old nephew's attention and said, "Hey, guess what? I'm Superman." As I ripped open my jacket later on, my nephew got my attention and said, "Hey, guess what? I'm a dinosaur," as he ripped open his jacket showing off his dinosaur shirt. Story 84. I have been told that years ago when my SO's daughter was around 5, he had gotten a serious back injury that put him into the hospital. She went to visit him and told him to it up. "Princess, I'm not tired. I'm never tired. I don't sleep, I just wait." Story 85. Today my son asked if I had a tiny screw to fix one of his toys. I said I do not, but I can get one. He said, "Yes, tomorrow you can take me and my sister to the hardware store and buy one." I said maybe. His response, "No, not maybe, we will be going to the hardware store tomorrow." "Oh okay." Or, "Daughter pulled this tonight. She wanted a particular bedtime book. I couldn't find it, so she said she was just gonna scream all night long." Story 86. My mother ran a daycare for many years and she had lots of interesting kiddos. The best flex moment, however, was when one boy was pulling at his crotch. Usually means they have to use the bathroom, and my mom asked him if he needed to go potty. The boy looks my mom in the eyes and dead serious says, "No, my penis is just really big and it was sticking to my leg." She just said all right then and let him be. Story 87. Not a parent, but I got a friend with a 7-year-old niece I sometimes hang around at a pool party, and I joke that my knees hurt because I'm so old, only 24. She stares me down with cold dead eyes and just says, "Mine don't." Because I'm not old. She wasn't making a joke, just stating a fact. Still kinda shocked me. Story 88. My son was talking about having shy bladder and how he learned to pee in front of others at a circus. I took him to that had a trough for peeing into. He goes, "I knew if Dad could stand up there and pee, I could too." That's also when I learned Dad is packing heat. I didn't know he knew the terminology. It was so hilarious, but odd in the best way. Also, I learned 4 inches is packing heat to a kid. LMFAO. One day, "Son, all this will be yours." Story 89. My 3-year-old consistently has to sing the lead in any song. Today I starting singing the chorus and she goes, "No Daddy, you have to sing the bad parts. I keep telling you." Story 90. For Father's Day my wife got shirts for me, my 7-year-old son and 5-month-old daughter that say Player 1, Player 2 and Player 3 has entered the game respectively, visiting my parents, and today we're all wearing the shirts and his grandmother asks about the shirts and what shirt she should wear. We didn't get to a clear answer on that, but my son said to her, "The one for great-grandpa, her dad should say game over since he's dead." Story 91. Son was too young to start public school since he had a late birthday, so we had him apply to a private school so he wouldn't lose a year. They did a series of admission tests and the final test was an interview with the principal. She asked him a few pretty basic questions, one of which was to spell his name. He looked at her puzzled and got up to leave. Then he turned to me and said I don't want to go to this school. The principal can't even spell my name. Started walking out like the little boss he was. P.S. A few people were curious about what happened. As my son was walking out the door, the principal laughed, then turned to me and said he's in. Story 92 was playing with figures from Pixar's Cars with a 5 and a 3-year-old. The 5-year-old was Lightning McQueen and was narrating the story. It was super mundane stuff like let's go get groceries and we need to fill up on gas until this exchange 5-year-old look. There's a hitchhiker. Me, what should we do? Are we going to pick him up? 5-year-old, no, we're going to eat his skin. I haven't looked at that kid the same since.